So it seems like PlayStation is going through some troubled times. They are cancelling projects, laying off people, shifting away from games as service and going back to single-player games again. So what is really going on at PlayStation right now? Let's look into this. But before we look into it, let's check iniba.com. They offer games for Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo and PC, and they always have a ton of games on sale, like these horror games, for example, or some must-play games of the season. So let's check some of the horror games. There's a ton of great games over here, like this one, Little Hope, or Evil Within 2. So let's grab this Steam key for this game and add it to your cart. Buy now. Let's pick the cheaper one, and also we can add more, so we can actually check some of the must-to-play games. Assassin's Creed, Spider-Man. How about Spider-Man Miles Morales? Why not? Let's add it to your cart too. Buy now. And basically all you have to do now is just proceed to checkout or keep on adding more games. And now all you have to do is just select a payment of your choice and you are done. Guys, iniba.com, you will find the link in the description of this video below. Okay guys, so let's talk about Sony PlayStation. I haven't really said anything about PlayStation for a while, and yeah, I wasn't really paying too much attention at what's going on there. And there's been actually quite a lot of things going on, but I just didn't really want to talk about one particular thing. But now, after a number of things to report, I thought to myself that it may be actually worth talking about it, because there's been a ton of things happening at PlayStation, not necessarily good things, that I think is making a lot of people talk about PlayStation and their troubles a little bit more, even on PlayStation side of things. So today I want to focus on cancelled projects, developers layoffs, people layoffs, obviously executives actually, and very important people, PlayStation leaving the company, the whole shift from games as service to single player games again, and what's going on at Bungie. So I wanted to start with Jim Ryan and Connie, I forgot her surname, sorry about that. So Jim Ryan announced a couple of weeks ago that he will be leaving Sony PlayStation. He's leaving, I think, in March. He's still going to stay with PlayStation until end of March, and we still don't know who's going to take over. I think the current CEO, I think he's Mr. Totoki something. He will be in charge of Sony PlayStation until they will find somebody else. But Jim Ryan is leaving, and Jim Ryan was the one who was really pushing for the more games as service, and he kind of he was, I think, one of the people that made a lot of decisions to, for example, to focus more on Western productions and leave Sony Japan behind. They did cancel a number of projects there. They kind of shut down some of the Japanese studios there too. So he was one of the people, pulling the strings. So that's Jim Ryan. He's leaving. And so obviously now with new PlayStation CEO, whoever that's going to be, things may change, right? Whether that's going to be for better or worse, we don't really know. Now, but there's another interesting person that is leaving. Her name is Connie, but I forgot her surname. Sorry about that. I'm sure that people in chat will remind me. So she was there for like 2 or 3 decades at PlayStation, right? I think he was even there before they started production of PlayStation. So she's really, a proper PlayStation kind of person, right? And she was a producer. She was responsible for producing a lot of PlayStation exclusives, a lot of them really. And she was really praised for her hard work and dedication and management skills, because it's actually very difficult to make sure that like all these games deliver and whatever, right? So she was really, really good at it. And now she's leaving. Apparently she was fired. Apparently there were some issues between her and Jim Ryan. And I also hear that's David Jaffe, so he knows PlayStation through and through, and he's saying that a lot of people that used to work with Kony, they are leaving. A lot of people are leaving or left already too. So that's actually not really good for PlayStation production of games, really, because like I said, like she was this a producer that she was responsible for a lot of projects. No, I'm not saying that all of a sudden like it's all doom and gloom for PlayStation, that no games are going to be made, but yeah, I mean, who knows? We'll see how that goes. But Kony, she was responsible for delivering a lot of these games. She was not developing them, but management is very important, and we can actually see that at Microsoft, for example, like, somebody didn't really pay too much attention to Redfall and what's going on there, what was their need, and somebody wasn't really making proper decisions with surrounding that game's production, and we got a flop, right, basically. So these type of people like Kony or MaDz or some other people, production people, they've got very responsible jobs, because they are the ones that decide whether to go ahead with some projects or cancel some projects. They are making these decisions. I know that they are not really making these games per se, but they really need to have that sense of that sixth sense, if you know what I mean, to know which production to go with there and which one should be cancelled. So that's the top people there. There's probably some other big people that left too. I've heard about. There was this one more production guy, I think, that left a couple of months ago. So things were changing, and I think it's David Jaffe believes that it has something to do with the fact that Jim Ryan was really pushing for games as service, and Kony was more about like single player games. But at the same time, she did deliver quite a lot of multiplayer games in the past too. So I don't know what's the issue there. Like there was some beef between Jim Ryan and Kony, but the weird thing is that Jim Ryan is leaving, so why is Kony leaving too? So maybe PlayStation will still want to push for whatever Jim Ryan had in mind, right? So that's these top management people leaving. But at the same time, we see. Well, let's talk about cancelled projects first and games as service, and then we'll talk about some layoffs at PlayStation. So we all did notice that PlayStation is kind of shifting a little bit towards games as service, multiplayer games. And that makes sense because, let's face it, as far as we all love PlayStation exclusive, third-person, over-the-shoulders, narrative-driven games with great stories and very immersive, and I really enjoy these games. But these games are very expensive to produce, and they become even more expensive with each generation. So, like, even what's his name? The previous PlayStation CEO. It will come back to me in a minute. He did say that the production of these titles are not sustainable in the long run because the PlayStation customer base doesn't grow. I mean, I think they reached the peak with PlayStation 2, selling 150 million consoles, and they never reached that, or they never went above that ever since. PlayStation 3 sold like 80-90 million. PlayStation 4 is around 120 million. So that's still a lot of consoles, don't get me wrong. But what I'm saying is that you've got really, the cost of producing games is going really, really up. But the customer base doesn't grow, so you don't get more money really for these games. I mean, yes, there will be some games that will sell, tremendously, like God of War and that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that these games are actually losing money, but still, overall, they really need like more revenue. That's why they started investing in games as service, because you can laugh all you want at Xbox for producing these games as service, and like games like Sea of Thieves or State of Decay, or what's the game from Obsidian Entertainment that game very similar to Honey, I Shrunk My Kids. I keep forgetting the name of that title. But so these games are very cheap to produce. I mean, they still cost millions of dollars to produce, but really, relatively speaking, in comparison to like God of War, they cost like just fraction of that money. But they produce a lot, but they actually bring a lot of money back, because a lot of people play that game and they buy microtransactions and everything, like Sea of Thieves. And so Sea of Thieves have been, people still play this game to this day. The game still sells. They sell microtransactions. So they may not necessarily be these blockbuster kind of games like God of War, but they bring a lot of money all the time, right? And that's what PlayStation needs. That's why Jim Ryan was really chasing these games as service. Now, the problem, I think, is that last generation especially, they moved away from multiplayer kind of games so much that they don't have enough of talent to make these type of games. I'm talking about talent to make multiplayer games. Because like with PlayStation 2 and especially PlayStation 3, they had a lot of games that did come with story, but also multiplayer, right? I mean, that faction, or even Uncharted used to have multiplayer. I'm not sure about Uncharted 4. I think it has multiplayer too, but that was never the main focus, right? While with Xbox, like Halo, I mean, every single game from Xbox has a multiplayer component, and that pays really to do that. Like for Microsoft, that's why they make still a ton of money, and that's why they really needed to focus on these games as service. And that's why recently we've seen more announcements from PlayStation showing multiplayer games, and unfortunately some of these games have been cancelled because they just didn't actually they were not that really great. And to be honest with you, how many of these you can actually make and to get interest. Now, another problem with some of these games, for PlayStation games, is that they are not on PC. Now, you need to guys understand that when it comes to revenue and stuff, I mean, yeah, bringing PlayStation 5 games to PC 2 years later, that brings some money to the ecosystem, sure. But the problem is that you're not really going to get the same amount of money if you were to release games day one on PC, because that when the interest in that game really is where it's peaked at, right? And so I think that this is another thing that PlayStation will have to move forward to, like introducing these games way earlier, maybe even day one, who knows? Because yes, PlayStation 5 is a very successful console. They are selling these consoles at staggering rate. But at the same time, that doesn't necessarily translate to, more game copies sold. Like Final Fantasy 16 didn't really sell that well. I mean, it sold very well, but it didn't sell good enough to please corporations, if you know what I mean, right? So, these games are very expensive to produce, and that's the thing, right? So, but I think that the problem with PlayStation, that's just my personal opinion, was that Jim Ryan basically came up with that idea. Okay, guys, we need to make multiplayer games now, and I think that he forced some of the internal studios to do that too, instead of maybe buying studios that would make that, or maybe buying some multiplayer games from third party. Who knows? He also forced that on first party studios, and a lot of these studios were not really interested, because hey, they've been making these single player games for like a decade or two, and now they want them to make games as service. That's not where the talent is, if you know what I mean, right? So I think that in general, Sony push for games as service was just a bit too hard. I mean, yes, they need to invest more money in games as service, but I think not to a point where they would compromise on quality or quantity of these single player games, because PlayStation Nation requires, they want these single player games for the most part, and most people love these games, right? So it's not only about multiplayer games. And so I think what's going on here, first off, there's layoffs, right? So a lot of these projects that Jim Ryan was pushing for has been cancelled because they were just not good. Even Naughty Dog's factions were kind of at least put on hold. Some people say that even cancelled. I don't think that it was cancelled. I think that they may actually start from scratch or whatever, right? Apparently, Bungie did say they tested whatever Naughty Dog produced, and they said it wasn't good. So looks like that project is on hold right now. So we don't know. We're probably not going to see factions for a while. So we've got these projects cancelled. We've got people being laid off, unfortunately, because of that. But even Bungie is reducing their employee base. So they fired like 100 people apparently. And to be honest with you, I don't really actually like the way they did that. And I understand that sometimes you have to let people go. Microsoft does it, Nintendo does it. Like it happens in corporations. Like I'm actually working for like a big cybersecurity company too, and we had layoffs too, but everyone was actually let go on a good terms. They were paid properly. They got their money to secure next couple of months and stuff. So that's the way you let people go, not like at Bungie where some people were just, they did not even let them know. Some people would come to the office and they would find out that their lockers are locked. They cannot log into their computers. So they were not let, and nobody let them know. I mean, that's crazy, right? So so let's summarize this all, guys, because I mean all these things are not necessarily good for PlayStation. Now, it's not all bad for PlayStation, don't get me wrong. They still got, a ton of great games in production. The question really is when we're going to see these productions, because now these games take like 5-6 years to produce. Insomniac is actually very, very hard-working company, I would even say. I mean, they are clever about their production. They reuse a lot of assets. I wouldn't be surprised if Wolverine, at least in some parts, it took place in New York from Spider-Man. And it makes sense. A lot of corporations actually make that. If that makes the production process a little bit shorter, why not? Remedy does the same, and they actually save a ton of money on this, right? I guess it's all about the scope, reusing assets, and because that reduces the cost of production too. So Insomniac games are very clever about it. Like with Spider-Man 2, yes, they did reuse a lot of assets, but hey, it is what it is. Why create something that you've got already, right? I mean, what's more important is that you build on top of that, right? It's not really copy-paste, right? So it is what it is, guys. Well, so what's going on at PlayStation? Well, looks like they are still trying to figure out where to go next. I think they realize that they cannot continue operating the way they did. Consoles, yeah, they are fine, but they need to focus more on other platforms too, like PC. That's why we're actually seeing more and more games coming to PC. Obviously, games as service, that means more games for PC too, because if you make these type of games, you have to release them on both consoles and PC, because way more PC players actually play these multiplayer games. So that makes sense. I think what's going to happen moving forward is that PlayStation will not give up on their games as service dream. They will have to make them, but I think they will just reduce scope of them, or they will probably not force these type of projects on their first party studios per se, like the ones that used to make single player games only. They did buy a lot of other studios, and they may be told to produce these games as service, maybe smaller ones at first, to not invest too much money into them. But here's the deal, like there's really a lot of ways you can make a game, because like you've got God of War and Last of Us, Horizon Zero Dawn, and these kind of games costing like $200 and $250 million. And then you've got Remedy delivering Alan Wake 2 for $50 million. And that's actually, that $200 million includes the marketing too. So, I mean, I remember even like Witcher 3 being delivered for like a fraction of the cost. So, yeah, sure, you don't have to pay developers as much as you have to in like States, but maybe you should diversify. Maybe you need more studios in other parts of the country where the cost productions would be lower, right? I mean, I'm not saying to get rid of Santa Monica Studios or Naughty Dogs or whatever, of course not. But at the same time, you need more studios like that, I guess, that can produce these games for much cheaper, in my opinion. Good example, People Can Fly apparently are working on a new game for Microsoft now, on AAA budget game, and the cost of that game is going to be $50 million. And you know what? You can actually produce a big AAA game in Poland for that kind of money, because hiring cost in Poland is much lower than in Germany, UK, or United States, right? That's the way it works. So anyway, guys, will PlayStation be fine? Sure they will. Will they have to change their strategy and plans? Probably yes. I mean, they are in the process of changing and shifting things around. Will we be still getting the single player story driven third person over the shoulder game? Sure we will. And I'm sure that we will actually see some games as service from PlayStation 2 in the future. But it's all about balance, in my opinion. So anyway, guys, it is a little bit longer video, but I just wanted to put as much stuff I could in this kind of video. Didn't really want to split into these small individual videos, because it's all related really. So I guess you get the full picture now. So anyway, guys, that's the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about it. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.